You think he pulled away because he lost interest. But what he really lost was peace. And while you tried to get closer, searching for signs, words, and reassurance, he was only looking for silence. Not because he stopped loving you, but because he realized that love that constantly needs to be explained eventually starts to hurt. Maybe you've lived that moment too, the one where someone goes quiet and that silence feels like abandonment. But here's what no one told you. Sometimes, silence is just the mind's way of surviving the emotional noise the other person carries. Everything you've been taught about love might be completely wrong. You grew up believing that true love needs constant reassurance, that it's proven through words, effort, and presence, that the more you show, the more you love. But no one ever told you this. The human mind doesn't find safety in explanations. It finds it in emotional coherence. And coherence is silence. It's when what someone says and what their energy communicates are the same thing. The problem is that when one person seeks peace and the other seeks certainty, love becomes unbalanced. He withdraws, she insists, and both believe the other is the problem. But the real conflict isn't between the man and the woman. It's between the need for peace and the need for reassurance. Two emotional languages trying to love in the same sentence. The truth is, when a man goes silent, it doesn't always mean he's running away. Sometimes, he's just trying not to say something that could cause more pain. And when a woman insists, it doesn't always mean she's needy. Sometimes, she's just trying to make sure there's still a we. What destroys love isn't the lack of feeling. It's the lack of emotional alignment. He wants peace because his nervous system connects love to rest. She wants presence because her heart connects love to safety. In psychology, this is known as the clash between the avoidant and the anxious. Two opposites, drawn to each other because they recognize something familiar, but hurt each other because they move at different emotional speeds. One needs space to regulate, the other needs closeness to feel secure. And when these two worlds collide, what should be love turns into a silent war. He feels accused of something he doesn't understand. She feels unseen by someone she's trying to reach. Both are fighting for the same thing: inner peace. The human mind seeks only two things in a relationship: regulation and belonging. When we feel connected, the body relaxes, the heartbeat slows, cortisol drops, and the brain says, "I'm safe." But when that bond is threatened by silence, distance, or uncertainty, the nervous system goes into survival mode. For men, that state feels uncomfortable. From a young age, they were taught to control emotion, to solve alone, to search for logic when chaos appears. So when emotional intensity rises too high, their instinct isn't to confront it, it's to withdraw. Silence becomes their way to self-regulate. For women, that same silence feels like rejection. Because biologically, a woman's brain interprets emotional distance as danger, a potential loss of connection. And loss to an emotional brain feels like threat. So she tries to restore the bond, talking, asking, explaining, reaching out, not out of control, but out of fear. It's her body's attempt to feel safe again. But here's the paradox. the more she reaches out to calm herself, the more he pulls away to calm himself. And the cycle repeats, one running to preserve his mind, the other approaching to preserve her heart. Neither of them is wrong. They simply learned to survive in different ways. He learned that peace equals silence. She learned that love equals presence. And when love becomes noise for one and absence for the other, the bond begins to fracture, not from a lack of love, but from a lack of emotional translation between two emotional languages. Picture this. She sends a long message, pouring her heart out, explaining what she feels. He reads it and doesn't reply. Hours go by, then another message, and another. Each minute of silence becomes a trigger echoing inside her mind. He doesn't care. But on his side of the screen, he's not ignoring her. He's processing, trying to find words that won't make things worse. In her mind, silence means absence. In his, silence means protection. Two worlds interpreting the same act through opposite meanings. Now imagine the reverse. He comes home exhausted, craving quiet. She senses the distance and thinks, he's cold with me. So she starts asking questions, trying to connect, to pull him back into the space they used to share. But the more she tries, the more he shuts down. Not because he stopped loving her, but because his brain reads that emotional intensity as invasion, not comfort. He wanted a silent hug. She wanted a conversation. What was meant to reconnect them becomes an unconscious test of emotional endurance. And slowly, without realizing it, they begin to wear masks. He becomes the distant one. She becomes the emotional one. And love, once light and effortless, starts carrying the weight of unmet expectations. Most relationships end right here, not because love disappeared, but because neither person understood what the other was truly asking for. What makes this pattern so painful is that both are reacting to the same wound, the fear of not being enough. He seeks peace because emotional chaos activates his sense of failure. From childhood, he was taught to stay composed, rational, strong. When the emotional volume rises too high, he feels he's failing as the protector. So he withdraws, not to punish, but to avoid breaking down. She seeks reassurance because silence activates her sense of abandonment. Since childhood, she was taught to adapt, to please, to earn love. So when someone pulls away, she assumes she did something wrong. And in trying to fix it, she moves closer, not realizing that her healing instinct feels like pressure to him. It's a perfect mirror. One fear triggers the other. And together they build the illusion that they're hurting each other, when in truth, they're both just defending the same pain. Psychology calls this the dance of attachment, a cycle where each person's reaction reinforces the other. The more he retreats, the more she chases. The more she chases, the more he retreats. Each one believing they're fighting for love, when they're really just fighting for emotional safety. But here's the real insight. Withdrawal is not the opposite of love. It's the body's way of asking love to slow down. Silence often is a limit being communicated without words. And what looks like indifference is sometimes just the subconscious trying to protect a bond that became too heavy for one heart to carry alone. When you finally see this, something shifts. Love stops being a battlefield and becomes a space of translation. Because in the end, No one really wants to win an argument. They just want to feel that we can rest inside someone. He wanted peace. She wanted reassurance. And both were asking for the same thing in different languages: emotional safety. When love matures, you no longer have to choose between peace and connection, because real love brings both. Maybe that's what no one ever taught you. Love isn't about proving, convincing, or resisting. It's about understanding. It's about offering space when someone needs to breathe and presence when they need to know they're not alone. Because in the end, love isn't about who's right, it's about who's aware. So if you want to keep exploring the depths of the human mind with me,
To understand what truly shapes relationships and human behavior, subscribe now. Every video here is a descent into the unseen, and maybe a quiet return to yourself.